On the edge of the small town, there was a stall selling dead fish. The stall owner was a tall and thin man with gloomy eyes, and the dead fish on his stall gave off a putrid smell. A woman passed by and saw that the dead fish were very cheap. Just as she was about to reach out to buy some, she suddenly heard an old woman whispering beside her, "Don't buy them at all. There's something wrong with these fish." The woman asked curiously why, and the old woman frowned and said, "These fish were all caught from the cursed lake outside the town. It's said that anyone who gets close to that lake will be cursed." The woman thought the old woman was just trying to scare her, so she ignored her advice. The woman bought the fish and went home. She started to deal with the fish, but she always felt a strange smell, and the eyes of the fish looked particularly eerie. When she went to bed at night, she dreamed that she was surrounded by a group of dead fish. Those fish opened their mouths and let out shrill screams. The next day, the woman found strange black spots on her arms, which looked like marks of decay. She was terrified and quickly went to look for the man who sold the dead fish. When she arrived at the stall, she found that the man was smiling in a strange way, and the air around was filled with a putrid smell. The man said coldly, "Once you buy these fish, you can't get rid of them." The woman was extremely frightened and turned around to run back home. However, she found that the putrid smell kept following her, and all kinds of strange noises began to appear in her house. At night, she heard someone crying in the darkness, and the sound seemed to come from inside the walls. The woman didn't dare to fall asleep. She turned on the light and saw that her face in the mirror had become distorted, and black mucus was constantly oozing from her mouth. Suddenly, the light went out, and the whole room was plunged into darkness. The woman felt something approaching her, and she screamed desperately. When the woman opened her eyes again, she found herself in a strange place surrounded by dead fish. The man who sold the dead fish was standing in front of her, smiling and saying, "This is the price for buying the dead fish." The woman wanted to escape, but found that she couldn't move at all. Since then, the woman disappeared, and no one knew where she had gone. And that stall of dead fish was still there, giving off a strange and eerie smell, as if it was waiting for the next person. A woman discovered an old mirror in an antique store. The frame of the mirror was exquisitely carved and gave off a mysterious aura. She took the mirror home and hung it on the wall of her bedroom. That night, as the woman was getting ready to go to sleep in front of the mirror, she inadvertently noticed that her own image in the mirror was a bit blurry. When she leaned in closer to take a careful look, the image of herself in the mirror unexpectedly showed a creepy smile. She was startled and rubbed her eyes to look again, and the mirror returned to normal. On the second night, the woman stood in front of the mirror once more. The image of her in the mirror began to distort and deform. Her facial features became twisted, and black liquid seeped out from the edges of the mirror. The woman backed away in horror, but the mirror made strange noises. After that, all kinds of terrifying scenes constantly appeared in the mirror. The woman saw that she was shrouded in darkness in the mirror, and a dark figure was slowly approaching from behind her. She wanted to escape, but found that she was trapped in front of the mirror and couldn't turn around. One night, the woman found that the world in the mirror was no longer limited to her own room. She saw a gloomy corridor appear in the mirror, from which came bursts of painful moans. Curiously, she reached out to touch the mirror, and then she felt herself being sucked in by a powerful force. Inside the mirror, the woman saw a terrifying world. She saw her parents, who were shrouded in darkness and their bodies were twisted and deformed. The woman wanted to cry for help, but couldn't make a sound. When the woman returned to the real world again, the image in the mirror became even more terrifying. She saw that she was covered in blood in the mirror, and her eyes were filled with fear. The woman decided to smash the mirror. She found a hammer and hit the mirror hard. The moment the mirror shattered, a cloud of black smoke gushed out from it. The woman was enveloped by the smoke and plunged into endless darkness. Since then, the terrifying scenes in the mirror disappeared. However, the woman had been in a trance ever since, as if she were haunted by the evil shadow in the mirror. Her life was completely changed and was shrouded in fear and despair. The woman worked in an old barber shop. There was an exquisite comb in the shop, and there seemed to be a mysterious aura hidden among its teeth. One night, while the woman was tidying up the barber shop, she found a strand of jet black long hair on the comb. She picked up the comb curiously, but the hair seemed to come to life and wrapped around her fingers. The woman tried to pull the hair off, but found that she couldn't break it no matter how hard she tried. When she got home that night, the woman felt her scalp starting to itch. She looked in the mirror and found that her hair had become unusually thick, and there was a black mist winding around the strands of her hair. She was terrified and wanted to cut her hair off, but as soon as the scissors touched her hair, a shrill scream rang out. The woman began to be haunted by strange noises. At night, she could always hear someone whispering in her ear. Her hair seemed to have come to life, growing continuously, getting longer and longer, and even starting to wind around her body. One night, in front of the mirror, the woman saw that her hair had actually turned into a black human figure, which rushed towards her with its teeth bared and claws outstretched. The woman was so frightened that she collapsed to the ground, but her hair wrapped around her even tighter. The woman tried to escape from her home, but her hair seemed to have gained consciousness and held onto her tightly. Her hair grew longer and longer and fluttered around the room as if it was telling an ancient curse. In the struggle, the woman discovered that this strand of hair was transformed from an abandoned soul. It had been hurt by others before and had a deep resentment, wanting to take revenge on the world through the woman's body. The woman decided to break the curse. She used scissors to cut the hair off bit by bit, and every time she cut it, a painful scream could be heard. After a lot of effort, the woman finally cut off all of her hair. When the last strand of hair fell off, a black mist filled the room. The woman saw that the black human figure gradually disappeared in the mist, and her hair also returned to normal. Since then, the woman's life has returned to peace. However, she could never forget the terrifying experience brought by that strand of hair. She knew that once some things were awakened, they could never disappear. A woman lived in a remote small town. Her job was making handmade leather goods. One day, while sorting out old leather materials, she found a unique glove. The material of the glove felt soft yet cold, with delicate patterns embroidered on it. Exuding a mysterious aura, she put on the glove out of curiosity. In an instant, she felt as if her hand was firmly grasped by an invisible force. She tried to take off the glove but found that it seemed to be stuck to her hand and couldn't be removed. That night, when the woman was lying in bed, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her hand. She turned on the light and saw that her hand was starting to deform. Her fingers became twisted and her nails grew long and sharp. She let out a terrified scream and tried to use her other hand to control the hand. But the hand seemed to have its own consciousness and kept waving around. The woman's hand started to uncontrollably grab things in the room, breaking everything. She wanted to call for help but found she couldn't make a sound. When she looked into the mirror, she saw that her hand had turned into a terrifying monster with sharp claws and blood dripping from the nails. The woman tried to escape from the room, but her hand firmly grasped the door frame, not allowing her to leave. The woman felt as if her hand was possessed by a demon. She tried every means to get rid of the control of the hand. One night, in her sleep, she heard a voice whispering in her ear, "You can't escape." When she woke up, she found her hand had become even more terrifying. Her hand began to grow black hair and the skin became rough and scaly. The woman tried various methods to get rid of the control of the hand, but none of them worked. She didn't know what to do and could only spend every day in fear and despair. Finally, her hand completely controlled her and she became a cursed person. Her hand kept waving around, bringing fear and disaster to those around her. The woman worked in an old nail salon and had to deal with all kinds of nails every day. One day, while sorting out the customers' nails, she found a strange nail. This nail had a peculiar shape, was gray in color and gave off an eerie aura. The woman picked up the nail curiously, but then she felt a cold chill spreading from her fingertips. That night, shortly after the woman got home and lay down, she felt a sharp pain in her fingers. She turned on the light and saw that her nails had started to become unusually hard and their color was getting darker and darker. She tried to cut her nails, but found that they couldn't be cut at all. The woman began to be haunted by nightmares. In her dreams, she saw her nails growing continuously and becoming extremely sharp. Her nails seemed to have come to life and started to attack the people around her. One night, when the woman was standing in front of the mirror, she was shocked to see that her nails had actually turned into a pair of sharp claws. She was terrified and wanted to escape, but found that she couldn't move her body at all. The nails then began to scratch her body, and blood flowed out of her body. The woman discovered that this nail was transformed from a cursed soul. It had been hurt by others before and had a deep resentment, wanting to take revenge on the world through the woman's body. The woman decided to break the curse. She used scissors to cut the nails off bit by bit, and every time she cut them, a painful scream could be heard. After a lot of effort, the woman finally cut off all of her nails. When the last nail fell off, a black mist filled the room. The woman saw that the black soul gradually disappeared in the mist, and her nails also returned to normal. Since then, the woman's life has returned to peace. However, she could never forget the terrifying experience brought by that nail. She knew that once some things were awakened, they could never disappear.